This is the gentleman from California, Mr. Rohrabacher.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me just, we have a cattleman with us here, Mr. Chilton. Mr. Chilton, you are really not in the cattle business. You are in the money-making business. Everything you do is aimed, just like everybody else. We're working our jobs, but we really are doing it to earn a living. But in your earning your living, you're providing meat for my family, and I appreciate that. And I'd just like to know that, do these water issues impact on the price of the hamburgers that I'm buying?
I would say yes. The cattle business is one of the largest businesses in the nation, and as it's impacted adversely by bureaucrats at the Environmental Protection Agency and the Corps of Engineers, it raises the cattlemen's costs. And it's absolutely absurd to think that the rules, the 2015 rules, which were over a half-inch thick, are easy to understand. They're ambiguous, and I can't.
Did you have to hire a lawyer to?
Yes,
now,
consultants and lawyers.
Let me ask about the consultants and lawyers. The fee that you had to pay them, did you add it on to the price of the meat for the hamburger that I have to buy for my kids?
No, it took away from my profits.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's a fair answer. And let me just note, if the cattlemen don't make a profit, my kids are going to pay more for their hamburger. And just like every other business, unless you take away a profitability. Now, let me ask this. When I was a kid, my family came from North Dakota, and we'd go back and visit. My dad was a Marine, and we'd go back and visit our relatives. And we're relatively poor people, I might add. I remember there were on these roadsides out in the middle of nowhere, there are these gullies, and I guess ditches was a better description of them. And they would fill up with water, and my cousins would go out and they could actually get some crawfish out of those ditches. And let me ask you this. Today, if, according to the rules, if something goes wrong with those ditches and a federal bureaucrat or federal government employee now has power, do they have power over the water in those ditches? I'd ask that, I guess, to Ken. You go right ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to answer that question, because one of the items that we did take care of in the rule from proposal to final was we excluded virtually all of the roadside ditches from the jurisdiction. We wanted to make that clear. So the answer, I can't speak to the specifics, but it is highly much more likely than not that the ditches you described would not be jurisdiction. So
the question, the big question we have to have now is, do we really want to expand the federal definition of what those ditches are? Like you have just described, we took those ditches out. Why do we have the federal government making that determination? Shouldn't that be, I mean, that should be left up to local people. Why are local people any more less sympathetic with these important issues we're talking about, the cost of this man's doing business, or the cleanliness of the water that everybody consumes in that area? Why is the federal government more sympathetic to the needs of the people than a local bureaucrat or a local government official?
Well, that's the 2015 rule would have given all of that authority to state and local officials. By saying that these would not be jurisdictional, the federal government would have no role.
Yeah, I understand. On the ditches.
On those ditches, yes.
But not on these dried up riverbeds that we're talking about, and they will determine what's a ditch and what's a dried up riverbed. Now let me just ask one last thing. Of course, when it comes down to California, you have to understand, we were just in a big drought in California. And this was a drought that lasted 3 or 4 years. And in the middle of the drought, we had people who were so nutty that we actually channeled millions, hundreds of millions of gallons of fresh water into the ocean in order to save a little thing called Delta smelt. Now, let me just note that crawfish are really important, I think, but they're not important enough to give all this power to the federal government, and maybe to have some really horrible economic decisions on the industry that provides us our meat. And what we learned in California, sometimes people are so crazy and so fanatic about endangered species and things such as that, that they will hurt the well-being of regular people, as they did when they put all of that water, fresh water, into the ocean in the middle of a drought in California.
Gentleman's time is expired.